July 30th, 1965, President Johnson signs Medicare into law. And shout out to the History Channel once again for their Today in History emails and for really prompting me to spend way too much time going down a rabbit hole and really just going on a journey of learning and unlearning and doing this work that I should have been doing all along. So before we get started, let me just say, I am not an expert in Medicare. I am not an expert in history. I love to learn. I love to learn, and while I'm learning, I love to share what I'm learning because I think that there are other people like me who are on a journey of learning and unlearning and want to translate all the information that we are receiving into meaningful action. And so my background is in learning and development, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in my day-to-day work, in my business, I teach people how to see other people, how to see the systems through a lens of DEI, utilizing the table of diversity, using this tool. Come with me. So there's a lot to the Medicare timeline, and I don't have time to go through all the things here, but I do want to share 3 things that I found to be interesting, and then share what you know, share what you find to be interesting as you go on your own journey of learning. Let me know in the comments. But the first thing that I thought was really interesting is that Congress had its first hearings on government health insurance in 1916. And it was part of the conversation when the Social Security program was being developed. But President Franklin Roosevelt at the time decided that it was a better strategy to focus on the Social Security aspect and not the healthcare aspect. And then I started doing math. And it's been over 100 years that we've been having conversations about universal healthcare, and we're still having these conversations. I don't get it. So in 1945, President Harry Truman proposed a national healthcare plan, and it didn't pass. But I was very shocked to learn the context of Truman's version of universal healthcare. And his goal was to help the middle class because apparently poor people were receiving a lot of assistance, healthcare wise, from charity programs. Wealthy people could afford it, but it was the middle class that was left out and wasn't being served. And this also struck me as interesting is that when Truman enlisted in the Army, he was struck by the number of men deemed unfit for service due to poor health. And he felt like it was a reflection of inadequate health care for parts of the population. One of the biggest opponents and critics of this universal healthcare plan was the American Medical Association. And in my mind, I thought American Medical Association, well, surely they want everyone to have access to quality health care. Surely they would be the good guys. And no, they weren't. It turns out that they were just concerned with losing money, of course, and they thought that they would lose control. They didn't want the government telling them what to do. So there was actually someone who was, I guess, a friend of President Truman, and they sent him a message or a letter saying that they disapproved of Truman's healthcare plan and called it socialism. And this is actually the letter that Truman sent in response. And what I really found interesting is that if you didn't know that Truman wrote this, you would think that it was written today. And there was 2 key things that were said. Truman said that he was very disappointed in the way that the American Medical Association was distorting and misrepresenting the entire program. And he said that he's got to go out here now and tell all the people exactly what he's asking for in the Medicare program. And he ended the letter by saying to his friend, I think it's a lot of people like you who need to be straightened out on this subject. And this is in the National Archives, which I think is amazing because it's cemented in history forever. And I was really interested to see if the American Medical Association had changed their stance on, being against universal health care, single payer health care, and if they even apologized for fighting so hard against it way back in the day. And I found this on their website, which I thought was really interesting. And yeah, they have. In short, yes, they are now proponents of, health equity and universal health care. But the problem is they no longer have like the leading voice in this conversation anymore. They no longer have the same kind of power that they did before. And what I also found to be interesting is this first sentence here first part of the sentence, the AMA has long advocated for health insurance coverage for all Americans, which we know to be false just based on this history lesson. So the Medicare program, which provided hospital and medical insurance for Americans aged 65 or older, it was signed into law as an amendment to the Social Security Act of 1935. President Johnson signed the bill at the Truman Library, and former President Truman was enrolled as Medicare's first beneficiary, and he received the first Medicare card. And I thought that that was just a sentimental touch to kind of tie the whole thing up in a nice bow. And just FYI, the Medicare program has expanded several times since it was first signed into law into what we now know it to be. That's it, y'all. That's today's lesson. And I feel like it was a good one. I know that I learned a lot, and I can't wait to see what you all learned in the comments. But if you want to be more intentional in learning, taking meaningful action, and being what I like to call a productive disruptor, the first step is to go to the Table of Diversity website, sign up to get your free copy of the Table of Diversity, and let's get started. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.